one of two entry columns that were commissioned by the Friends of Lone Fir in 2016 for the replacement of the entry columns that match those on the west side of the cemetery. Myself and colleague Jared Hendrick were commissioned to fabricate new entry columns, and we spent several months and several hundred hours fabricating and installing these. I'm Matt Goddard. I'm a local stonemason here, born and raised in Portland, Oregon.
And where is this stone from?
This stone material here is from the Howard Canyon Quarry in Corbett, Oregon, and it was to be the best approximate geological match to this material, which was the original bases that were here prior, presumably are from the Mount Tabor Quarry or perhaps the Rocky Butte Quarry.
Mount Tabor or Rocky Butte?
Right here in Portland, Oregon.
Yes.
Right in the city limits.
Now, geologically, I understand these are all part of the same phenomena that we call the boring basalts after Boring, Oregon.
Yes.
All within the last 2 million years or so.
I can't add much to that. I can only speak of the workability of each of these stones. It's extremely workable. I have a couple pieces of it here that you could see. Just the different colorations, the lavender being the Mount Tabor or Rocky Butte basalt, which as far as the workability, they're very similar.
It looks all smutsy, kind of smeared out. All the olivine is fresh and green, or greenish brown. That's really remarkable, the difference in color there. And you can see the olivine flecks. You can see the olivine
in
flecks
both
of them.
In both,
that's
absolutely.
Really
yep. They're both very conducive to hand tools. So this is why we chose this material, because this quarry is now defunct and we couldn't get the material. The columns were selected out in Corbett. They were just columns that were laying around, and then also we had the guy with the traco kind of just pulling stuff off because we needed X amount of girth to net this width here. And then we graded them and hauled them out to Helix, Oregon, to where they were diamond wire sawed. And so there was going to be obviously a lot of crust that we cut off to net that kind of, think of it like sawmilling. You're running a log through, you're getting the bark out there, and you need that beam. And then so I had big slab plates at this thickness of the polygonal shape of the column. Talking about this texture here that was the background for the frame, and instead of just going with a sawn or honed frame, we decided to use a bush hammered texture for this backsplash here. That's applied with a pneumatic tool called a dallet that was invented in early 1900s. It's a single piston air tool. We insert what looks like a carbide tooth kind of meat tenderizer, and we very slowly and carefully valve that down and texturize this backdrop here. And that had 4 prongs, which gave it about plus or minus 3/16 of topography. It's still a very formal, refined kind of texture.
And that's to provide an even background for that brass plaque.
You'll see it on other monuments here as well. It's actually fairly efficient and fairly quick to apply on certain stones, but the vibration from the air tools mandates that you take a break after a while, because it's like holding on to a squirrel that ate a bag of speed. So these were the 2 original base stones that were here that are replicas of the ones on the west side of the cemetery. These are the original stonemason's tooling marks. He was a little bit rougher than we were. We decided to be slightly finer, but I think after another 100 years, ours will weather in and round over. So this here is a rusticated draft margin that is applied with a tracing chisel or sometimes a tooth chisel. And we decided to mimic that. It was actually spec'd that we do that on these edges. And so that was a fairly surgical process for us to do. So this is a carry through of the original draft margin here. And we did this here. It makes the rock face texture more pronounced. It kind of gives the stone a dimensional frame. It just kind of adds some elegance and some refinement to the work.
How do you get a straight edge? I mean, you eyeball this and it's perfectly straight.
Well,
Do that.
squares and measurements, and that's part of the ancient art of stone cutting. It's pure math, so you just have to be mindful of level and square and plumb and not to take too much off. It's painstakingly slow, and that's why you just don't see it anymore. How are you, Paul?
I'm the communications director of the Geological Society of the Oregon Country. And then looking over to the left here, who are you, sir?
I'm Eric Wheeler. I'm an architectural historian in Portland.
I just would ask you to repeat the phrase, the description. It's like, what is it like, Matt?